Welcome to the first episode under the Credit to Cash Leaders podcast. We have with us Brandon, Director Level Global Order to Cash at Insight Software. Today we'll be speaking on billing backbone, the critical connection between invoices and leaders.
I started my O2C journey over 10 years ago at Insight Software. We have went through a rapid growth through a lot of acquisitions. It's been a real fun journey.
I'd love to know your take. Is the connectivity issue between invoices and orders?
Orders are the foundation of invoices. Without solid orders, your invoicing leaks revenue. At one of the organizations, we had a pretty weak CRM system. There was no way to take the orders from sales team and connect them to invoices without reviewing each and every one manually. And we had revenue leakage using a tool like Salesforce where everything is built structurally with a purpose. It's that automation and reporting that you can find your revenue leakage.
When the order gets created between sales and finance, that's where the handshake happens. There's a lot of loss of context when it moves from a contract quote and order to an actual invoice. We'd love to speak on two top transformation projects.
The renewals team that I was managing, there was about 6 different mass actions and they would fail quite often for unknown reasons. We did an audit and rebuilt them into 3 mass actions. The second project is around AI. We were building an invoice validator with AI that couldn't get through all invoices before you ran out of tokens. I realized that AI is not required. We ended up building a Power Automate flow using a Salesforce connector. Saved a lot of time.
We also believe at Finflow that this is a big problem statement where invoices don't match with contracts or orders. We have built this tool which connects the invoice line item, pricing, quantities, address, and then matching. What were the outputs that you could achieve?
We've saved about 30% to 40% of the time spends on invoicing. I'm excited for phase 2 and 3 to hopefully get us to a 70 to 75% time savings.
We'd love to know, how do you see AI disrupting the O2C space?
We're going to go through a few different phases. Phase 1 for AI in order to cash is plugging the revenue leaks. Right. Second phase is where you run into some data analytics. I went to AI. In about 5 minutes, it came up with the same number.
Yeah.
Phase 3 is automation. Fourth phase is additional data security. Last phase, they're going to have an opportunity to grow their career quite rapidly.
What are your advices for finance professionals?
Data security always be at the forefront. AI is not always the answer. If you take care of your employees, they will take care of you and your organization.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode under the Credit to Cash Leaders podcast, where we bring together O2C, credit, billing, and AR leaders to discuss how process, technology, and AI automations accelerate the entire credit to cash cycle. My name is Amartya. I am the co-host of the Credit to Cash podcast along with Valerius. In my free time, I run Finflow, an AI-driven AR and credit decisions product. So today in our first episode, we have with us Brandon, Director Level Global Order to Cash at Insight Software, a global provider of connected solutions for the office of the CFO. He comes with more than a decade of experience in O2C across firms like Insight Software and at a fiber to the home internet provider, where he scaled operations from 2,500 customers in one state to 30,000 customers across 3 states within 5 years. Today, we'll be speaking on the topic of the billing backbone, the critical connection between invoices and leaders. It'll be a slightly more nuanced and a little bit more technical approach to the entire topic of billing backbones. And great to have you, Brandon. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. With the first question, you had a very interesting journey in across the finance landscape, especially O2C billing across the entire suite of, if I may call it, in the CFO tech stack. How has been your product and leadership journey in O2C?
Yes, I started my O2C journey a little over 10 years ago at an internet service provider. We were local in about three different communities in one state. It was a very small organization, and I was there for about 7 years. So the last 5 years of that, we rapidly grew the company from about 2,500 customers in that one state in three communities to about 30,000 customers across three different states, multiple different service offerings. And then from there, I moved to where I'm at currently at Insight Software. I'm currently the senior manager for order to cash, specifically in the renewals and order management departments. Um, we have went through a lot of rapid growth here at Insight Software as well through a lot of acquisitions, which makes the company just continuously evolves. So it's been a real fun journey here at Insight Software, and I have learned a ton since I've been here.
Got it. Very interesting. I think, of course, you've been here in this particular space over the last 10 years. Technology has also evolved a lot. I'm sure that we'll also cover the aspect of technology in a while. But living in interesting times, I say, because post COVID and pre COVID and post COVID, there have been a lot of changes in the entire landscape of working with customers from an O2C perspective. And your role itself has really evolved. I think let's move to the next question. When we talk about the entire B2B segment, you have the entire aspect of contracts and you onboard a customer in a CRM like a Salesforce. And once you deliver a product or service, then you have the entire order management side coming in, purchase order, sales order, and based on that, you delivering the product or service, you generate the invoice and send it to the customers. So one of the major challenges that we have seen in our experience, and I would love to know your take, is the connectivity issue between invoices and orders. So there is, how have you seen the problems and what do you believe are the solutions, and what is the role of technology in this to solve this? Do you believe technology can solve it or something else? So I'd love to know your approach on this particular problem statement of connectivity between invoices and orders for the entire billing
Mhm.
process.
Yeah, so I think it's a great question. Orders are the foundation of your invoices. And so without solid orders, your invoicing leaks revenue. A real example at one of the organizations I was at in the past, we had a pretty weak CRM system. So when orders came in to the billing department, the provisioning team was inside the billing department. The orders came through just in a text copy and paste template. Nothing was linked together, came in a ticket, and one of the provisioning specialists would pick it up, build the services, and then the invoices would generate based on those services. And there was no way with our CRM to really take the orders that came in from the sales team and really connect them to the services and the invoices without reviewing each and every one manually. And we had quite a bit of revenue leakage there because we had a weak CRM. I think that the tools that we use directly impact the revenue that we leak and the customer experience that they have. And using a tool like Salesforce, where everything is built structurally with a purpose. And so your sales form on your opportunity or your quote on the opportunity, that drives the order creation and creates the order for you. And so it's that automation and it's the reporting that you can build out of that to really pull forward and to find your revenue leakage from the orders. Because, like I said, without solid orders, you have revenue leakage because you don't know exactly what you're invoicing and if it's accurate.
Got it. Excellent answer. I love the answer. I think you covered two aspects of it, and one was when you were working with a weak CRM. And I totally agree. If there is a weak CRM, there's a lot of handholding that happens when the order gets created between the sales team and the finance team. That's where the handshake happens, and the finance team takes it over. So there's a lot of loss of context when it moves from a contract quote and order to an actual invoice, right? And that's where the ball drops because the orders are not constructed properly. It leads to a lot of disputes because you are under invoice, you are over invoicing and over billing. And if you're under billing or under invoicing, then it's a revenue loss and revenue leakage. And that's a huge thing, right? Because it's very difficult to know there is a revenue leakage and you see it like tentatively post facto 1 year later, and you will just realize that you lost $2-3 million, and that's a huge impact on a company's revenue. Loved your answer. I think there has been two stages of working with CRMs and the importance of CRM in the entire process of order management. Let's go a little bit more technical in terms of, we spoke about this as an example of what change that you have brought in, but we'd like to talk a little bit more about the transformation projects, right? And I believe you must have worked on transformation projects. We'd love to speak on two top transformation projects which you loved, which you believe that brought out that aspect of transformation. It can be technological transformation, it can be process transformation. We'd love to know why you did it, what were the impacts, and what are the maybe the takeaways from these transformation projects.
Sure, yeah. Since I've been at my current organization, I have grown into a couple of different positions. When I first started at Insight Software, I started as the manager for renewals and special billing. And when I came into the department, the renewals team that I was managing managed the auto renewals for the organization. We auto renewed product lines that maybe did not have as much of an upsell opportunity at the time, or just based on sheer volume, we needed to process renewals in mass. And so when I came into the team, there was about 6 different mass actions, and they would fail quite often for unknown reasons. So there wasn't any sort of audit track to see what happened, maybe which ones failed in the mass action. What we did was we started a project and looked at our mass actions as a whole, and we were trying to pivot towards a new tool. And the tool that we had was a third-party tool. And after looking at other tools, it looked like we had what we needed, right? And so then we took another step back and we looked at, okay, if everyone's recommending our tool, why isn't it working? And I think that the one thing that people miss the most in some of these projects is sometimes you do have the correct tools, they're not set up properly. And that's where your issues come in. And we did an audit of the mass actions, tore the 6 of them down, and rebuilt them into 3 mass actions where you had an audit trail. You could see the records that failed and why, so that you could just go through and fix those. With that project, we saved, I had a request open for 1 additional seat for renewals because some things were getting behind with the system errors. And so I was able to actually cut that request. And then when I had a team member move to another department shortly thereafter, I did not have to backfill that. So really, I saved 2 seats on that team right away. The
Got it.
second project, and a very recent project, is around AI. So we have been trying to incorporate AI into our workflows. And one piece that was taking a lot of time for the team to go through were invoices. And we were building an invoice validator with the AI system that we were using. And we got it to work, and it was working great, except for the fact that it couldn't get through all of the invoices that were in the list before you ran out of your tokens. We tried many different iterations of that and still kept hitting the same issue. And we took a step back and looked at our technology stack again and had some conversations with AI, and realized that we were plugging a tool in that we didn't need. AI is not required for an invoice validator. But what AI did was it helped us look at the technology stack that we currently have and build a tool, not with AI, but with the tool helping us build what we needed for the invoice validator. So we ended up building a Power Automate flow using a Salesforce connector, and that runs now every morning validating invoices. It has saved the team a lot of time to where they can focus more on the ordering and the fulfillment processes, not so much on the invoicing. Invoicing is a very important part of any organization, obviously, Your invoicing, you want to have automated, because if your invoicing is automated, you can trust your system. And when you can trust that your system is invoicing your orders correctly, that helps prevent that revenue leakage.
Got it. Love your answer. I think the first part which you mentioned was with regards to the mass actions that were happening. And I think audit trails help. Completely agree. And I think getting an audit trail exactly tells you where exactly there is an error. Because you look at the end results, one way to look at it is how many orders that you are completing or how many mass actions that you're doing on a daily, on a weekly, on a monthly basis. That's one way to look at it. But the devil lies in the detail, and audit trail exactly takes step by step. And it's easier, takes time to view an audit trail, but it's much more easier to understand what exactly is happening. Love your answer with regards to coming up with that entire process of putting all the action items in audit trail and then analyzing it. How can we do it better and getting from a six mass section to three mass sections, lesser complexities, much more powerful to understand and using it where it's actually required rather than using it everywhere. Love the answer in terms of the first answer. And the second project was very interesting. This, just to clarify, this was for your internal usage, or you were looking to sell this product in the market, or you were looking to use it for your own consumption?
So the tool that we built is just for internal consumption.
Yeah.
Our organization is pretty complex with all of the acquisitions that we have done over the last several years. Brings a lot of billing complexities, invoicing complexities in there. So we have a very specific use case for our automation.
Got it. No, love the answer. I think the second one was very interesting because you mentioned that you had the journey of applying AI in your workflows for invoice validation and then realizing it that's not required in terms of you can build an automation tool which basically validates. The most important thing is to have it the right source of truth from Salesforce to getting in the data and then running the validation on it and then having the right set of invoicing. I think that makes a lot of process, and we also believe at Finflow that this is a big problem statement where invoices don't match with contracts or don't match with orders. Downside, they create a lot of disputes. An automation tool, we have also built this tool, and we also believe that AI is not required over here. At the max, maybe you can do an ML-driven OCR on invoices, reading an invoice PDF or reading a contract. But the most important thing is automation, which connects the invoice line item, pricing, quantities, address, and then matching. Love the answer. I think I'm sure that the automation of the invoicing validation process and linking into the automate ordering and fulfillment process has generated a lot of point as well. But just to keep it very brief, what were the outputs that you could achieve? Was it like saving of man-hours or more quicker invoice generation, more quicker collections? Was that the output? Or there was more efficiency and accuracy in data? What were the major metrics that you could achieve?
Yeah, so we got a lot of efficiency out of that. That's actually something that we've been looking at this week to determine what our kind of efficiency gains are out of it.
Yeah.
At initial glance, I'm pretty comfortable to say I think we've saved about 30% to 40% of the time that everyone spends on invoicing. I think it's important to keep a human in the loop, right? And so the very large invoices, so our six-figure invoices, they are not automatically posted and evaluated by the AI. We want those high dollar ones to really get, a human touch on it just to validate it. And then our very small invoices as well, your single digit or your less than $1 invoices, those, no matter what, those all get reviewed. I think at first glance, we've saved probably at least 40%. That's the first iteration of the invoice validator. You normally don't deploy your best final product, and it does have some limitations to it. But I'm excited for phase two and phase three to hopefully get us to a 70 to 75%, time savings. And and so we have a lot of people that do a lot of different things. So you're validating invoices, you're validating orders, you're activating orders, and you're fulfilling the order. Along with that, you're working cases and other projects. And so, really, what the team's been able to do is focus more on the order validation, on some of the process changes and the process updates that we're doing.
Right.
So, it's really given the team a lot of time to be able to focus on other important aspects.
Got got it. I think spoke a lot about on the importance of technology, importance of audit trails, importance of automations, and also understanding where AI can be applied and cannot be applied. And one important point that you mentioned is the human in the loop is very important, especially in processes where it needs a little bit more learning or modeling around what you want to do. So that helps in terms of handling all these cases where AI or the technology can't handle, and a person needs to take a call, especially where it also there is a clash with your customer relationship. So for sales guys, there are some large customers where relationships are important. They'll say, "Hey, you can take one, two, or three, four more on a weekly basis. We don't care, but our customer relationship is very important." So in that case, a human in the loop really helps to balance it out. So love the answer, Brandon. I think let's move to the next question. I think we covered a little bit on the AI aspect. We'd love to know, how do you see AI disrupting the entire O2C space?
Yeah, so, we are in a crazy time, I think, right now. We went through COVID. That was a wild experience, I think, for a lot of us. We learned a lot. There was I think, a major shift in how people work after post-COVID. And so I think for AI, I don't think that we know exactly how it's going to disrupt all of our teams. The most important thing that I try to tell my team, and I've been doing this for years, is that for their goals that we set at the beginning of the year, which we're about to set again, there's always an educational piece to their goals. My instruction is some kind of education,
Right.
whether that is a Salesforce Trailhead course, whether that's a LinkedIn learning or a Workday learning. Continuous learning throughout your career is very important. If you are continuously learning, you're going to be staying on top of the changes with AI and changes elsewhere throughout the orgs. I think we're going to go through a few different phases. I think phase one for AI in order to cache is plugging the revenue leaks. Right. I think we've talked about that today some, but you don't know where your revenue leakage is until you find it. Right. And most times the first thing you do is you plug that hole. And we need to always be looking for revenue leakage. And I think that AI is going to help us locate that. I think your second phase is where you run into some data analytics. For example, I had been asked to look at a partner account and for the rest of their renewals for the rest of the year. It was a very large partner and discounts were different. So I had to go through each contract to review the discounts
Yeah.
and come up with what the revenue would be for the rest of the year. It took me about a 6-hour analysis all total. When I finished that, I went to AI and I gave it the exact instructions that I was given. And in about 5 minutes, it came up with the same number,
Yeah.
exact to the penny. And I think that's phase two kind of the AI disruption is the data analytics or the data analysis. I used it a lot today for data analysis, and I think it's just going to help us find the revenue leakage and find where we have other inconsistencies or inefficiencies within the team.
Right.
I think phase three is automation. I think that's when we start getting into the AI agents and where it's really automating tasks that individuals are doing today. I think eventually our AI will be doing all of the order validation and activating all of the orders. Maybe the only orders with a human review are going to be your high dollar orders and or your complex orders.
Right.
But at the end of the day, your complex orders should be able to be handled by AI and validated even better than what a human can. But there is that human touch that's still needed for those special circumstances that the AI may not necessarily know.
Mm. Yeah.
And then I think the fourth phase that I think we will run into eventually is additional data security. Data security is at the forefront right now of everyone's minds with AI. And I think that the fourth phase of this will be a lot more AI security.
Yeah.
I think that the safety of our customer data should be number one priority for the organizations, especially in today's world. Um, so I think data security and then people as well. I think that last phase, we're going to run into employees that have been learning, like I talked about with the annual goals. For the individuals that are learning, they're going to have an opportunity to grow their career quite rapidly. With AI, I know a lot of the questions are out there, what that's going to do to layoffs and to staff reductions. In my organization, we're not seeing it as any sort of a staff reduction, more where we can specialize our teams and maybe even create new departments. So within order management, the team does quite a few different tasks, whether that be fulfillment, invoicing. And I think there's a real opportunity to specialize the teams and create new departments. I think what we're going to find is we have more departments for specialization and less individuals in each department.
Got it. God, loved your answer. I think it's a very structured answer in terms of the application of AI phase one, phase two, phase three, phase four, the phase two part of data analytics, phase three of automations, and phase four of the aspect of data security, and phase five is of people. I think it's a very well structured answer and you nailed it. I would agree with how you anticipate the entire AI evolution. And obviously, the first part is terms of understanding what kind of impacts and how can you build that education level, how can you build out, how can you plug those revenue gaps, how do you figure out, then you move to the data analytics part. You give a very great example of bringing down that 6 hours of data analysis to 5 minutes of data analysis. Obviously there are back and forths that you must have done in terms of getting the AI as to your own internal logic. Phase three of automations in terms of actually implementing it and using it for automating the process flows. Phase four of data security in terms of, and that's been a big question, as you rightly said, right? You always feel that your data is going through an AI model. What is the data and security? But I frankly believe that when companies have moved from on-premise to cloud architecture, there's always that same level of doubt on the cloud architecture. You're pushing your data to a cloud, there's an AWS, Azure, there are Google Cloud. So you have these kind of question marks, but people over a point of time have started migrating to clouds from premise because they figured out there are a lot of benefits. So they're ready to take that risk because there are a lot of benefits. I believe personally, once AI starts showing those kind of benefits, people will be okay to do it. Obviously, you need trustworthy AI partners. If you are using an LLM, that should be trustworthy. The data should be, confidentiality should be maintained, and those all security parameters needs to be maintained. And finally, you mentioned people. Obviously, people are the most important. So, loved your answer in terms of the 5 steps of AI application. Would move to the last question, Brandon. What are your couple of thoughts, or key advices for finance professionals to become a finance leader?
Sure. Yeah. And I think data security, we just talked about that. I think that is something that should be at the forefront of everyone's mind throughout the entirety of their career. We shouldn't ever lax from that. It's the single thing that will take down your organization. So I think data security should always be at the forefront of your mind. Also, on that front, though, is not fearing failure. So, one thing that I always tell my team is it's not a bad thing to fall down. It's not a bad thing to have something fail. You just need to get up and pivot, right? I think that as leaders, we discuss different options all of the time, and we can get stuck into an analysis where we could pilot it.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily have to be a super big structured plan, but you could take a little bit of data and try it and see what happens. You should always welcome your unexpected outcomes because that's definitely something to learn from. So I always tell people not to stay away from failure in that sense. And then when it comes to I think the one piece of advice I could give about AI is that AI is not always the answer. In our invoice validator that we talked about just a few minutes ago, we were trying for quite a while to get AI to do the invoice validation for us until we took a step back and looked at our technology stack to see are we building this the correct way? Are we using the correct tools? So make sure that you have the right tools, because if you don't have the correct tools, you could just always struggle to get that answer that you're looking for, especially out of AI. And then I think the last piece of advice that I would give, we haven't talked about much on the podcast, but remembering the people that work for you. One thing that I tell my employees all the time is that they don't work for me, I work for them.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, you are not in the seat that you are in without the people underneath you lifting you up. And so, if you take care of your employees, they will take care of you and your organization. They will work harder for you. And during the tough times that we all have, right? We're at a time of the year right now where it's a busy time for a lot of organizations, and we're in a holiday season,
Right.
right? So I think remembering your employees first and foremost, taking care of them, they will help push you to the next step of your career.
Got it. I think the first thing that you mentioned was the importance of data security, knowing and how and understanding the importance and criticality for the organization. The second aspect is the fear of failure, working against that fear of failure or overcoming that fear of failure and taking a lot more risks in terms of understanding, in terms of assignments and challenges. The third aspect was AI is not the answer. The technologies that you're working, the ways and means of automating is more important than simply applying AI. And final aspect of the people first approach, and that's very important because if you keep people at the forefront, it's going to give you exponential benefits, exponential returns in terms of people focus. I loved your answers, Brandon, and I think we have drawn to the close of the podcast. And thank you everybody for joining the podcast. I hope you had a great time listening to Brandon. Please reach out to him on LinkedIn whenever you want for any sorts of advice. He's really good at what he does and he's ever helpful. And yeah, love having you, Brandon. I hope you had a good time over the podcast.
Yes, I did. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks, Brandon.